On agenda tonight, Manx TaxPayers Alliance representative Michael Josem tells you that you aren't interested in the Alliance's wealthy backers, before setting out a very clear and considered agenda to challenge the status quo and bring greater transparency into Manx politics. Is there a place for the Alliance's games and lobbying in the Isle of Man? I'm almost convinced, but surely transparency works both ways. Have a listen to see what you think.
The Manx TaxPayers Alliance is a not-for-profit lobby group based here in the Isle of Man, and so we're an organisation that's incorporated in the Isle of Man under the Isle of Man laws, and we're obviously very much based here, and we campaign around three basic ideas. First of all, that government taxes should continue to be low, fair and simple.
And would you say they are low, fair and simple?
Yeah, so that's why I say we believe that taxes should continue to be low, fair and simple. Second of all, that we should have high levels of government transparency. And third of all, that we should get good value for money as taxpayers for the things that we are forced to spend through the tax system. During
the last election campaign, the question arose, who is the Manx TaxPayers Alliance? Because of course the Isle of Man, this is what we do. We love to have a skeet. We love to know who funds things, how it all works. You have avoided giving an answer to that around about election time. Do you see that maybe people would be interested in knowing a bit more about who's behind the organisation?
So I don't accept the premise of your question that question was not answered, and that question was very much answered in that the people who are supporting the Manx TaxPayers Alliance are the people of the Isle of Man, and so obviously it is obviously illegal for me to reveal their names or identities, just in the same way as a visitor to Manx Radio today, when you go to sign in, the names of the other visitors are not visible, just as is illegal for the Greens Party or the Labor Party or Crew's Bereavement Centre or the Manx Cooperative Society or any other organisation in the Isle of Man to publish a list of names of supporters and so on. And so that's very normal. It is very obvious to me, and it is very obvious to you, Phil, because we've done the training in GDPR. We know what the law is, and we know that it's illegal to publish such information. And so, obviously, I'm going to abide by the law. And apart from anything else, that's a bit of a distraction here, in that I don't think, Phil, that your listeners care about me as an individual or care about any people who as individuals, but rather they care about the issues. And so that's what I think is much more important to talk about anyway.
Okay, so if we stick then with issues, why do you think there's a need for an organisation like the Manx TaxPayers Alliance? With our relatively small parliamentary system, the very approachable nature of members of the House of Keys, we seem to have managed well enough in the past with people who have concerns going and raising them with MHKs then either as part of government or perhaps as backbenchers lobbying government, have been able to do much of what you're describing as the role of the Manx TaxPayers Alliance. So what do you think has changed? What do you think has been the motivation to actually establish the Alliance?
So I am a very strong believer that our community benefits from more institutions, and so we can see across in the UK that they have a relatively vibrant parliament, which is very strong and very aggressive in scrutinising the claims of the government. They have chambers of commerce, they have trade unions, they have aggressively independent newspapers and other media outlets reporting and investigating and challenging the government. And I think that the Isle of Man benefits from different institutions. And so, for example, like just to take one example, a couple of months ago, we were curious to see about the growth in staffing numbers from different aspects of the government, and when we looked at the published data, we discovered that the data didn't add up. The numbers simply were in error, and so I think that no one else noticed that because no one else had actually looked at the data before. If we take last year's Isle of Man government budget, there are a bunch of just typo errors in the budget that was approved by Tynwald because they go a matter of 5 hours from the budget being published to the public to being rubber stamped by the House of Keys. There is not time for effective scrutiny. And so that's why the Taxpayers Alliance does things like looking at the boring data. We look at the spreadsheets, we make pretty charts so that we can understand and to benefit the people of the Isle of Man, because then they can easily see what the situation is.
You published recently an article in relation to government fat cats, and I thought that was quite a useful one to explore a little bit. I mean, perhaps to begin with, if you could explain what the concerns of the Manx Taxpayers Alliance are in relation to that specific issue.
Sure. So for many years, the Isle of Man government has been publishing data on the number of staff members employed at different salary levels above £50,000. I think it's fair to say that no one's really looked at much of that data previously. And so what we did is we took the historical data that was available from 2016 to 2021. We made it into a simple, accessible spreadsheet that anyone can have a look at now. And we made some pretty simple, pretty clear graphs. And that shows that the number of Isle of Man government employees earning over £50,000 a year has increased by about 75% in just 5 years. The number of government employees earning at the very top end has increased also even faster. So 5-6 years ago, there was just one employee earning over £300,000 a year. The most recent data shows that there's now 6. And so that's a big increase at the top end of town, especially at a time when, for many teachers are having pay disputes. The government says we can't offer you more than a 2% pay increase, but at the top end of town, it's a lot higher rates. And so I think there's a discrepancy there that the people of the Isle of Man should be aware of.
In relation to fat cats, it is fair to say that we all like to grumble about them, and yet various issues that have arisen over the course of the last 5-year term, potentially things could have been avoided if we had been able to pay people with more skills, more ability. Perhaps one of the criticisms of Isle of Man government is it doesn't attract the high flyers because it can't afford to pay them. So is this kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for government?
It's difficult to talk about this stuff so generally because the Isle of Man government provides very little specific information. It's difficult to answer that with much concrete, and that's a little bit different from across. So, for example, across in the United Kingdom, they publish a list of every single government employee earning over £150,000 by name, by their salary level, and by position. Whereas that data does not exist here in the Isle of Man. And so the result is that the Isle of Man government pays, certainly from what limited data we have available to us, pays very generously compared to across. It's very difficult, Phil, to answer that question about the value for money of specific staff members here in the Isle of Man because we have a relatively small community. And it is difficult because the Isle of Man government does not disclose information as transparently as across. So, for example, across in the United Kingdom, they publish a list of the position of every single government employee who's earning over £150,000. No equivalent list exists here in the Isle of Man, and so their list across in the UK gives a for each position. That gives the floor of their salary, it gives the amount that they're being paid and the position that they're getting paid. That does not exist here in the Isle of Man. But what we do know is that the UK data, and I want to be very hesitant here in that it's because it's opaque here in the Isle of Man, I don't know if it's directly comparable. But across in the UK, there are 16 staff members who are earning over £300,000 employed by the British government. Here in the Isle of Man, there are 6. So they have 66 million. And we have people living across there. We have 85,000 or thereabouts, and so we have 1% of the population, but we have 38% of the highly paid government staff. Now I want to be very clear that those numbers are probably not comparable, but they're not comparable because we don't know what is here in the Isle of Man, and the Isle of Man government fundamentally operates on a policy of secrecy by default. And so whereas you can see the listing of every highly paid government employee across, we don't get to see that as transparently here in the Isle of Man.
Is that perhaps because of the scale, the size of the Isle of Man, it means that it would be very easy to identify individuals? Or are you saying that the names, the people are named or their positions are named in the UK anyway?
Yeah, so the positions are named in the UK. You can type this stuff into Google. Anyone can have a look and see what the rear left admiral of the South Pacific or whatever the position is. And you can obviously type that position into Google, and you can see who the photo of the person who fills that role. And so it's a different level of scrutiny. And so to get back to one of the questions you asked, why do we need this in the Isle of Man? Is that I believe that democracy dies in darkness. I believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so when we open this up and we are subject to that public scrutiny, because taxpayers' money is special. Because the government is the only body in this nation that is allowed to use force, and so taxpayer money is different in that what you do with your own private money is your own business, but what you do with taxpayer money needs to be subject to special scrutiny.
You're listening to Michael Josem from the Manx TaxPayers Alliance. The government used to produce what they called a quarterly economic report, which had quite a lot of information in it. Now, I think that was stopped possibly as a result of COVID, and perhaps the statistics had become so scary that it was felt necessary not to publish that to upset people too much because of the maybe alarming nature of some of things people might read, and bearing in mind that we were in the middle of a pandemic, you can maybe understand why government might want to do that. Is it your hope and expectation that information like that will start to be released again from government?
Absolutely, Phil. And that report that you refer to, that economic dashboard, was suspended during COVID, and it was substantially replaced by the Economic Recovery Group's dashboard. That stopped being updated in last year, and so we wrote to Treasury Department. We've already written to the Treasury Department asking that they reinstate that previous report, because that's useful information for policymakers.
And what information? I mean, what reply did you get to that?
We'll take it on board and give it all due consideration.
Right.
so let's hope that, because this stuff is really important for businesses planning, because the businesses planning can use this information to make estimations about future investment. They can make they can make better decisions if they have better information. It's not, should not be controversial information here about having information about housing prices or unemployment or inflation or other, common economic statistics, especially because the Isle of Man, as we all know, we're not part of the United Kingdom. There are some local factors that are separate here, and it'd be really good to publish that information. It's exactly why we wrote to Treasury some time ago asking that they reinstate that.
And of course, there is a perhaps not unreasonable habit of the Manx public that, in the absence of information, statistics, clarity, there's a habit of making up stories and or filling in the gaps with imagination. So it's actually in government's best interest, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, look, the best antidote to bad information is good information, and so if we can publish that information, that's why one of the things that I think is really important to the Manx TaxPayers Alliance is that obviously we are biased, we're deeply biased in favour of the interests of the taxpayer, but we always publish the source documents as well. So if someone disagrees with any of our conclusions, they can have a look at the underlying data as well.
This whole argument in relation to how to fund government services, there are two sides to this, aren't there? There is yes, we clearly don't want to squander resource. I think that's absolutely clear. I don't think anyone on the Isle of Man would say that squandering resources is a good thing, and yet. Certainly my experience in certain areas of government, we do you find the knee-jerk reaction, which is let's get rid of the middle management and the senior management and focus on the front line, which works up to a point. But then things start to go a little bit awry because there aren't people there to actually properly manage the service, and things go wrong. So can you see that it's not always as simple as the black and white when it comes to discussions about staffing?
Sure. So let's take the perfect example at the moment is the Education Department. In that I think that there's widespread consensus in the community that schooling and education is really important, in that there's probably no greater public good that our government provides than educating our young people, and that's really important. But it's disappointing that the Education Department has had a 40% increase in non-teaching staff over the last 5 years, but the number of teaching and lecturing staff has stayed entirely perfectly level at 990 staff here on the Isle of Man. And the result being is that in recent weeks a number of classes at St Ninian's, Ballacameen, Ramsey, and also I think down south at Castle Rushen, where students have not been able to attend classes because they've had insufficient number of teachers. And so we need to fix that. Instead of having a 40% increase in non-teaching staff in the education department, I think it's clear, as evidenced by the fact that students cannot attend school, that we don't have enough teachers here on the island. We need to fix that.
And of course, that 40% increase would be a 40% increase of a relatively small amount compared with the number of teachers. But I mean, I think it's still an important point.
It's about 50-50. And so 5 years ago, 60% of the education department's pay budget went to teachers. Now only 55%. And of course, that's 5% in 5 years, but that's a very concerning trend, especially when we don't have enough teachers to staff classes.
But is that because of changes in the role and remit of the department? So taking in other areas like the I don't know, swimming pools, sports halls, whatever, or is it because again, it's always difficult to do these comparisons, and I suppose what your argument, your riposte is going to be, well, government doesn't provide us with enough information to be able to make these conclusions.
Yeah. So this is data that was published by the Isle of Man's Human Resource Department, or by the Chief Minister, and so in that they've made decisions, and in other areas they appear to have corrected the data so it is like for like. So for example, during that last 5 years, Manx Care was pulled out of the Department of Health and Social Care, but they kept it so in that comparison, and so across the whole government there was a significant increase in the number of staff during the last 5 years, which is fine if they're doing more and better things. But if they can't even do the core things of running schools for students, then there's something wrong there. And so this data was revealed in answer to a question by Julie Edge, our new Minister for Education. And I hope that she takes up the reins, in that I think that she has a long and storied history of scrutinising government. Now she's in a position of influence as a minister. She should be riding the heads of her department, saying, why do we not have enough teachers to operate schools for every student? Like that's got to be the core education department mission, and let's get that done. And I hope that Julie Edge will be the woman to fix that.
In the course of the next 5 years, obviously, Manx TaxPayers Alliance, as far as you're concerned, is going to continue. Presumably, I mean, your description of it is it's backed by the Manx public. So you're actually paid to undertake this role.
Not at the moment, but I have been in the past.
You have been in the past. Okay. So you're a member. So how would you actually join the Manx TaxPayers Alliance? Is it a membership organisation?
Yeah. So look, anyone can go to our website, drop us an email. We'd love to have you. It's very open. It's very welcoming, and our website is at taxpayersalliance.im.
And are there lots of members? I mean, do we know?
Never enough. We'd always like to have more, and so like much like any other community organisation, it is driven very much by the interests of our stakeholders, and that's hopefully I think that one of the things that I think is really important though is to ensure it remains intellectually rigorous and to do this interesting research, which is why we published this data that anyone can have a look at. Benefits for the people of the Isle of Man. It's all freely accessible, and that really relates to our core mission.
And actually, that's quite an interesting revelation there, that you're no longer paid by the Manx TaxPayers Alliance, because I think many people believe that this was this was effectively a paid role that you had. So you're what would you describe yourself as then? A spokesperson for the organisation? No,
I guess so. Director, founder. I don't know I don't think that really is important. But what's important here is to to ensure that there are people here who are fighting for the interests of the people of the Isle of Man. Politics
is clearly a passion for you. I mean, you've fought a number of elections. You are very passionate about this. Does it worry you that people, I don't know, is it trying to get people connected with politics? I mean, the likes of the Our Island plan. I mean, government to a certain extent was scuppered by COVID when it endeavoured to go out and publicly promote the plan. But it's fair to say it's hardly captured people's imaginations. The Manx radio Vox Pop had a fairly disappointing result if you happen to be someone who's lived and breathed the Our Island plan for the last 3-4 months. How do you engage people? How do you get people more actively involved in politics?
So I think that we need to be humble as community leaders and recognise that for most people there are more important things than politics, and that politics is a distraction. It's far more important to get up in the morning, to go to work, to come home, to ensure the dinner's on the table for the children, that your kids are doing their homework, that that Married at First Sight is on a TV at whatever time it is, and that Man U is going to lose to Watford this weekend, and so on and so forth. And in that sense, politics is a distraction, and what I think is really important is we focus on the things that matter to people, such as the cost of living. So, for example, for many people of my generation, it is really difficult to buy a house on the Isle of Man, and that's because we have these very restrictive rules that relate to the supply of housing. So when there's not much housing available, the price goes up. This is the stuff that you learn at high school, or let alone university economics. It's really basic things. And so when we focus on those sort of issues, I think that people will realise that these decisions matter. And every time the government increases their taxes, so for this government has increased taxes on hospitality already. They didn't replicate the tax cut on aircraft passenger duty. I think there's a real opportunity for people to say, well, look, you got what you voted for, and you'll get it good and hard. And so that's the disappointing part.
I don't disagree entirely with what you're saying, that politics doesn't matter to, or people are disinterested. They have this lack of they don't see why politics is important to them. Maybe that's the best way of putting it. And yet everything you've described is to a certain extent governed or led by politics and politicians. And maybe I'm hankering for an age that never existed, but it does seem to me that we have a population who largely their only engagement with politics seems to be an election, and then once the election's out of the way, we hope that our politicians will do the best job and throw bricks at them when they don't.
Yeah, well, look, we have very long parliamentary terms here in these Isles. In other Western nations, it's elections every 2 or 3 years at the most, and so it's very unusual here for elections to be so rare. I think that shorter terms would be better, because it would increase the democracy, the democratic power of the public, and that we've got to remember the correct and the morally right pyramid of control is that the public should be on top, and they should keep their politicians under the thumb, and the politicians should keep the civil servants under the thumb. And so it was, that was something that my good friend Kate Beecroft, when she was health minister, she sought to do, and when she left the Tynwald, she reiterated that point, that these decisions matter. It affects people's lives, and if you chat to someone, hey, has your life been affected by the decisions on the prom? Then they'll give you very clear differences. They'll give different feedback. Whether it be things like to take something relatively trivial, it's like the flumes, the water slides at the NSC. Like, there is a fundamental, like, on one level it's trivial. On the other hand, it is a symptom of a political system that has lost its accountability, and it is unfortunate that people are having to go to hospital because the water slides don't work right. This should not be a complicated thing. And so, to come back to one of the issues that we talked about earlier, is that I fundamentally have a core belief that if we get the core job of government right, get the teaching right, get the infrastructure right, get the tax system right, that then the people of the Isle of Man will flourish and prosper and be better off as a result.
Michael Josem presents a very interesting case, and certainly convinces me that articulate lobby groups can play an important role in Manx politics, supporting the interests of the public and holding Tynwald and government to account. I still think that it's unfortunate that the backers of the Manx TaxPayers Alliance continue to hide behind laws designed to protect personal information rather than hide political influence, and this lack of transparency remains troubling to me. That's a real shame, as it undermines the credibility of an organisation which otherwise seems to be playing a valuable role. This programme is available as a podcast which you can access from Manx Radio's website. But for now, I'm Phil Gawne, Gawne. Thanks for listening.